You ready?
Yeah.
So we're gonna play rock paper scissors.
Okay.
I was like, is your hand visible? Okay.
Well,
Rock paper scissors shoot. What is that? A
rock.
rock? I'm done. What is that? Granite or like
Yeah.
a crystal?
I was ready.
That is genius. That's actually
Sorry.
genius. Wait, so you won. Oh, you won.
Yeah.
That that's why you got up. That's so clever. That's so clever. I wish I thought of that. Oh my gosh.
Sorry. I'll use my hand. So I don't mean to. Wait. So rock. What does rock mean?
So yeah, so my play that I'll be doing with the welders is rock, paper, scissors. So rock in my play symbolizes my blackness. It was the most obvious choice when I was coming up with the idea for this play back in 2016 because I was like, oh, rocks. They're strong, foundational. Um, there's also a rigidity to them. So thinking about I've been thinking about my relationship to my blackness in terms of like what other people say my blackness is supposed to be,
Oh
what
yeah.
television, media, white culture, white supremacy tells me what it should look like and exist as. So like and just the anti-blackness and racism within black culture that is not truly our black culture, but things that we do and say, all of just the nuances of being a black American. So I was like thinking about the rigidity, the strength, um, the foundation, like solid as a rock. So like it's a rock,
Yeah.
steady. I actually didn't know there were this many songs about rocks. But that's I guess that's what I naturally thought of where I was like, okay, rocks are solid. So it's like my blackness has been solid from day one, from before day one,
Mhm.
from how my parents raised me. That there's always been a deep connection to like African black ancestry and history. So like that was like a totally obvious match. So I explore that through movement and through the game in my solo play.
Neat. Again.
No responses?
Oh no. Do you want me to respond?
Yeah, please.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. My own race journey. I think has
Mm-hmm.
really I don't know kicked up a notch over the past couple of years. Um, Being black and Filipino, um, I don't think I felt necessarily solid connection to either actually. And I don't necessarily think it's my parents' fault, but I can't help but wonder how much of that is because like my parents were of this like almost like colorblind generation,
Mm,
right? Where you didn't necessarily talk explicitly about the things that make us different and culturally and whatnot. Um, yeah, so it's been interesting because I feel like it's almost been like it's been a hidden foundation to use that
mm,
metaphor, right? And there's just been a lot of crap on top of it that I thought was my identity, but wasn't. The thing that comes to mind actually is the first time I went to Creating Change with the
mm,
task force, and they had these identity caucuses,
mm,
and they had an Indigenous one, a Black one, and a POC one. And I because POC is where I gravitate to in general because I feel like it holds all of me. But before the breakout sessions happened, one of the two facilitators for the Black caucus space was like, "Hey, just like if Black is a part of you, you should be here, right? There's so many different ways to be Black." And I don't think I'd ever heard anyone articulate that
mm-hmm.
explicitly in a space that I was in a way that made me all of a sudden realize that not only was I welcome, but like I belonged in the Black space, right?
Right,
Because of the unique ways that I am Black and queer. And so, it wasn't an either or. I didn't have to choose.
right.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I love everything you just shared because it's right. The intersecting of things is what I'm exploring. Right, how do these things intersect? How are things visible and not visible? So that's those are definitely, and I feel like I hear it. I hear those themes when anyone speaks about their different identities. So that's
yeah,
I'm hoping that whoever sees the play will be able to identify with that, regardless of whether they are like me or not. because they just seem very universal and very deeply specific at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the genius of doing it through this game, because like each one of them kind of trumps another, but there's no like it's not that rock defeats paper and scissors, right? It's like it's this weird interchange where it's basically this circle and not this hierarchy of identity.
Ooh! Okay, I'm gonna remember that for later. I'm gonna go deeper
Okay.
into that. Yes, yes. Please remember those words. Whatever you just said. The circle. What did you say? Okay, it's in me.
Yeah.
Round two.
Yeah.
Rock, paper,
Sit.
scissors. Shoot. Who won? This is so funny. It's going in order for me. And I lost. I'm so happy. This is like a weird duality. I'm like, yay! And then I'm like, oh, I lost. I lost twice, right?
So far.
Dang. Because I'm focused on what I gotta say. That's why.
Yeah,
Usually, usually I'd be like, what did they put? Now let me try to guess. Okay, so scissors. So okay, scissors won. So yeah, it's funny because so when I was creating the idea around the show, rock was like the obvious, rock and blackness were the obvious first choice, and then oh, actually no, scissors was not second. I lied. It was last.
Yeah.
Scissors is woman,
Okay.
so it's my woman identity. I feel like I have a harder time with myself articulating why those two got paired. It was the last two left. So I had to put it together. So I think I feel like it's very symbolic. So I was raised very like black and African, like first. And so I feel like learning about specifically black women, what black women experience, what women experience, feminism, black feminism, womanism, like that stuff didn't come overtly
Yeah.
until college.
Well, could I ask about that?
Yes, please.
Especially like what was it like when, because some people don't know about womanism, right? So
Oh
like
yeah.
what was it like going from like feminism and then like learning about womanism? And what is womanism for people who don't know?
Okay, womanism was coined by Alice Walker. I almost forgot her name, and I was like, let me breathe. Alice Walker, who wrote the novel The Color Purple, which was made famous into the movie. So if you know the movie comes from the book. Alice Walker. So Alice Walker coined the definition, and it's a beautiful definition that is like poem and list and like it's a list of things that women do, like dance and cry and love other women and love men and it like I don't even remember everything on the list, and it talked about how um the shade of purple
Mm.
of womanism is I forgot what the term is, but it's deeper than and then feminism would be lavender. So it's this idea that womanism, womanness has is ancient and is older and has existed um pre feminism. At least that's what we discussed in college class. I don't know if that's what Alice Walker intended, but that's what we discussed in that class. Let me not try to quote. So for me, I learned about Black feminism and womanism at the same time because of introduction to Black women studies. So and I'm a Black woman who doesn't feel at home in the term feminist. I've had people try to put it on me, and it's been very uncomfortable. It's like I've never felt at home in that title. I believe in dismantling the patriarchy for men, women, for all various gendered folks. I believe in equal rights and access, but I still don't want to be called a feminist. It doesn't feel home. Womanist would feel more at home, but because people don't know about it as much, I don't always say it. But that feels more at home because it's like, oh, I could Alice Walker, The Color Purple, black lesbians, black queer folks. Like it's like, oh, that's my whole world. But feminism is has different waves and led by white women and erasing voices of Black women and women of color. So it's very convoluted for me to like try to enter in. So yeah, I feel like my identity to my womanness is like so. It feels harder to it has felt harder to tap into, um, and so like it actually I think is perfect that it's scissors because scissors cut. Um, so I feel what I'm playing with in my play is like what I'm expected to be and look like and exist as a woman, and just the way in which the standards and expectations is suffocating and it cuts.
Yeah.
Also, I think about the different relationship between women in the patriarchy and how we cut each other in terms of how we treat each other and compete with each other. So there's a lot of like cutting and pain in there, and I'm trying to figure out how to find the joy and the beauty. And it's been harder for me personally in my relationship to being a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's harder. So I feel like I have less nuanced things to say because I'm still figuring it out. I'm still figuring that out. Yeah.
What I love about scissors, though, like just hearing you talk about it, it's like the functionality of scissors is literally by making manifest the space between things, right?
Hmm.
Right.
What do you mean
Like
making
think you have this hole or like this piece of paper, right? This like let's call it like woman, right? This identity of what woman is as a monolith, and it's like, but no, actually, here are two different things, and like you keep cutting because there's so many different things that make up, and like the reason scissors work is because they make space where there wasn't any before. They create abundant space,
Say it again. They create what?
abundant space where there wasn't any before, and
I'm
like
gonna reflect on that. That's really
it's the space between things when you didn't even realize that something was two different things to begin with. I don't know. I'm rambling.
I just never have thought about it from that point of view. Yeah, I feel like I feel like I'm in a very negative frame. I don't want to label negative, but
But I mean, from the cutting and the pain for sure. Yeah, yeah. But
like
how do
like rock and paper as as we will discuss, like both of them, I see the duality. I see the like the basically I see the internalized depression and the internalized hatred, as well as like this is the way this thing exists in me when it's strength and freedom and
yeah,
joy. But with scissors, I think, and it's interesting because scissors, and maybe this is what you're saying. It's like you could make things with scissors. So there's this maybe that's what you're talking about. But you can like thinking about the making of things. Um,
yeah,
I'm thinking about like cutting like fabric for quilts, cut like, and I don't like I'm in this place of like I don't know. It's so hard. I'm in this place of thinking about the things that make, which often women get associated with, like but there's this for me what I know about my mother and my grandmothers is that there's a real magic, an everyday magic of Black women
yeah,
making things. So
Hmm.
like quilts and sewing, like and cooking, like those are and making home are things I've learned from the women in my life. So I think I was like trying to steer away from that, like no, but I'm like no, let me be grounded,
Yeah.
and and like that's real, like that's a real thing, like the magic that Black women do in the service and the labor that so that's real, definitely in my life and my family. And I think now I'm literally realizing if I lean more into that, that is where the magic and the joy and the creation. Oh my God, I'm having a whole epiphany comes from.
Right. Well, and I mean, related to that, right? I think so often that we judge the separation of things as a negative thing, right? But the only
Mm,
work is by separating something into two different parts.
I love that. Yeah, that's yes, I love that.
And it's creating abundance where you didn't like, now you don't just have one piece of paper, you have two.
That's what when I was in Brazil in March, a friend who is like continuing to like learn English and things like that. I think she used the word divide to mean share. And
Oh,
I
wow.
saw it as like a negative. I forgot what we were talking about, but I saw it as like a negative thing. And I was like, and then I caught myself and I was like, wait, why would divide need to be
Wow.
negative? And it was like this cool, like it was this language exchange moment where I was like, yeah, because when you divide, like what you just said, when you divide something, you can share it. If I
Yeah.
have one thing and I divide it, that means I can. And it's like that's such a like, oh, I love that. Right, cutting doesn't have to be. Yeah, that's interesting. That's definitely where I am in my process of writing and and choreographing. Is
Yeah.
like I'm very clear on the pain of the scissors, and it's like now what is the abundance? Like you said, the word abundance. That's gonna be that word is probably gonna be tied to now scissors. Thank you.
Oh,
Round three. Now for round three, do we want to play the online version,
sure.
or do we want to?
Yeah, and I can cover up the half of the screen so I don't see your answer.
And so we've talked about in my play rock paper scissors. We've talked about the meaning of rock. We talked about the meaning of scissors. So maybe I'll win a round.
Maybe.
So
Let's cover it up.
so exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, it's covered up.
Yeah. I can't see your mouse.
Okay. Rock,
Paper.
paper, scissors,
Scissors.
shoot.
Ah.
Ah! Let's talk about it. It's because I just said paper. Do you want to play again or should we talk?
Let's play again.
Okay. Rock,
Paper.
paper,
Scissors.
scissors, shoot. That's funny. That's really funny. That's very funny.
Get out of my head, Sisi.
I wasn't expecting that.
Okay, ready?
Yes.
Rock,
Rock,
paper,
paper,
scissors.
scissors, shoot.
Oh yeah.
Ah! Oh, I love it. I love it.
You want to talk about it now?
Let's talk about it. Yeah, that's so funny. I was like in my brain, I was like, I hope I win and I hope it's paper for my journey. For my journey. So paper is queer. Yeah. Yeah. So okay, where do I start? Where do I start? So really the impetus, the catalyst for this play is because I was coming in, as I say, coming out to myself as bisexual. So I was like in that process, early in that process in 2016. That was where the idea, because I was wrestling, relating, processing these three identities, and I was like, what games have three? Oh, rock paper scissors. So it's because of queer. Yay, queer. So I identify as bisexual and queer. I don't use bisexual for the game. I don't know why. There's probably a depth of reasons why, or maybe not. But I use the word queer. So why is queer paper? It was the second one I thought of because something I don't think I talked about in when I talked about rock and when I talked about scissors is that when I was creating the idea around this, I was thinking about how each element beats each element. So rock crushes scissors. So I was thinking about, well, yeah, I'll get into that. And paper, scissors cuts paper, paper covers rock, and I was like, that's perfect.
Right.
Because I was wrestling with, oh, if I'm queer, if I'm bisexual, people are gonna think I'm trying to be white or be in white culture. That was coming from the brain of Sisi, who was not aware of all the abundant black and brown history of queer
Yeah.
and trans folks in the world. So that was definitely my mindset then, definitely not where I am now, thank God. But yeah, so it was about this like covering. It's like, oh no, it's gonna take away from my blackness. It's gonna water it down. It's gonna lessen it. So
Yeah.
having queer beat black was like, that's how I that was how I was that was what I was like um struggling with. And so then I thought about as well, paper, a blank piece of paper you can turn into anything. So as I was like embracing my bisexuality and my queerness, I was like, it can be anything. And so the paper can be anything. So like you color it in, you crumple it up, you make it into origami, it can transform, it can expand. And I was like, those are amazing words for queer. So it's the element of paper is so different from rock and scissors because of the way that it can be transformed and made into other things and have colors added to it, have the rainbow added to it, all of it. So that yeah, that was how I associated
Neat.
her and queer.
And all of this is like involved with dance too, right?
Yes. Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah, it's a dance theater piece. I've made scenes and plays before with movement, but this will be my first, well, it's my first solo play, and it will be majority movement. That's going to be the language that and the tool that I'm using. I literally take this and make it move. I take this and I make it I make all of the what we do in the game. I started there and I make them into movements. So it's I really wanted these identities to live in my body and to be played out and the story to happen through my body because I think that's important because I'm so it's funny because it's like either even though I'll be competing against myself and that's what people will be seeing, I'm a black queer woman. So I'm always a black queer woman at base, and then I'm choosing the different identities to
Yeah.
push to the forefront. Um, yeah,
Neat. Oh my gosh, that sounds. I just can't even imagine what it's gonna look like design wise, right? Like,
I
have,
can't. No, I have some ideas, but I'm still like, I don't know. I'm like, I feel like with light, like I can't see the lighting, right? So I can't imagine what a lighting designer is gonna do with any of these like ideas and with the script. It's like I have no, and I'm like, which is like kind of scary and exciting.
awesome. Rock paper scissors.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Oh, there was one thing. Yes, I was thinking. Um,
Sorry.
you said. Oh, can you talk about what you said earlier about the all three of them, how they need to be, all three of them need to be something you said about energy. And I was thinking about this before we filmed. How the game itself, rock, paper, scissors, like you need all, like it's not that one element beats two, it's
Right.
that,
There's a
and there's
circle.
probably a word for it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
just this kind of circle of identity. Um, yeah, no, I think that's just really interesting because I think I'm all the things at one time too, but I
Yeah.
definitely sometimes find myself thinking like of how I'm interacting with other people sometimes through the lens of one identity or another, right? And I think that's really interesting too. Like if I'm in a even in queer spaces, if I'm in a group of like mostly male identified and masculine people,
Yeah.
like how I think about myself as a man is still different than like if I'm in a space that's mostly like non-binary and or femme and or women, right? And how my identity then actually like has a different energy.
Yes.
And I think it's just really interesting to see like how that shift happens for me, like depending on the company I'm in too, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I do forget that. Like I don't know. Part of it's also like going to a majority white school here in DC for like
Hmm.
fifth through 12th grade. Like there are definitely times I'm in majority white spaces, which I've just like been programmed to be comfortable with. But more
Yeah.
often now, I do get that point where I'm just like, oh, I'm the only black person here, right? It doesn't necessarily happen from the get go, but like maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes in, all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, and here's this, right?
Yeah.
So,
I love that. Yeah, I love that you brought up like the people were around because what's interesting is like even though I'll be the physically the only one on the stage, like I'm playing with this internal, not internal, I literally meant the opposite. I'm playing with external expectations, external pressure, external gaze. Like I'm being mindful of all those things because all those things created this like box of what each of them have to be.
yeah,
Um and the shifting. That's what's interesting I think about the game is like right. You can play the game nonstop, and different ones are gonna. So it's like right, and that's how I feel. Like that's how I feel. It's like I still since I created the piece, and now like I'm still working on it 4 years later. So 2020, I'm definitely more comfortable with my body, comfortable with my skin, taking up all of like the space. But there's still those moments where I'm like, I gotta shift this workplace. This family member that maybe doesn't know I'm not out to all the, like it's the
yeah,
shifting is like constant. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. So that shifting is definitely like what I like that you brought that up because that's definitely what I'm like what I want to embody for other people and hopefully like they get these conversations as well. It's like when do you shift? When do you hide because of survival or when do you hide because of comfort, discomfort? Like it's like or when is it placed upon you to hide? It's like it's all oh my gosh, it's just all there. And
yeah,
I think for some people, like for black and brown queer folks, we're always doing this and thinking about it, right? But maybe there's other folks in privileged identities, but it's like you're doing it too. You're doing it too,
yeah,
different scale, but you also there's different parts of you. They may not be your race or your sexuality, but it may be other. It's just like there's so many different identities that people don't get to present on the forefront because of white supremacy culture, white middle class dominant culture, capitalist culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
So I'm interested in like all the different ways that people like connect to the piece and like yeah share. Like I didn't go to a predominantly white school, but like I know what you're talking about. So it's like I'm really interested in all the different stories that come out of this.
Yeah.
And maybe how to capture some stories.
Yep. Awesome.
Thank you, JR.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Was I guess until next time.
Till next time.